Good morning. Dan just brought a 1984 catalytic elm from his home in New Hampshire. Taking the door off so that we can unload it from the truck. We're going to transform this into a secondary air stove so we could release it from the dolly. What we're going to do today is several things. We're going to replace this whole top, what's called the combustor housing, which is badly rusted, and possibly this elbow too, which is also maybe not even able to take it apart. And the back has a hairline crack right under the logo here, so we're going to replace the back as well. This had holes drilled for the hot water loop. The cold water goes in here and it comes out hot here. He had never set it up with the hot water loop, but is thinking that he should in the future. So the first step will be to grab some wrenches and begin taking the tie rods apart. Backs off, one stray brick, and then this may not come off that easily because you see these rods are clipped.
Under pressure, yeah.
Obviously some moisture has gotten down in here and caused some rust problem. And this is cracked and may or may not break away sometime, but it's certainly not an airtight seal. And whoops, that's an ingenious way to put that together. Okay. This is the sliding damper, and what we're going to be doing is closing off this opening in the rear completely and actually moving this opening to the center. Okay, then we lift it right off and find a place to put it. This is the bottom of the stove. Put just a little bead right at the bottom of that groove. Doesn't take very much at all. This is a clear gasket cement. Which we sell in a small tube. When anybody wants to do the gaskets themselves, I measure out the appropriate length, and this is the 3/8 inch fiberglass rope, which we use on the front and back where the ends meet the barrel. All I'm going to do is press it into that groove. And if you cut this, it frays. So what I do is wrap a little bit of the glue masking tape, or any masking tape, around the end so that I can cut approximately in the middle of that. Press it down into the groove. And if I wait 15-20 minutes, that'll dry enough so that it can be handled. So it's just the gas from the groove.
Okay.
Like much of the rest of this stove, it looks like these bolts might be rusted in there. I'm expecting them to break off just like that one did. So what I'm going to have to do is drill and tap to reestablish the threads in the same position. This one feels like it's going to do the same thing. Yep, this one broke off. Those are rusted right in there. This one feels like it's coming out, which is good. Sometimes you get 3 of them to come out and you say, oh, I'm going to luck out, I'm going to get all 4 of them. Then the 4th one will break off. Well, we broke 3 of the 4. They're just rusted in there solid. No big deal. This one has the mesh, this pierced metal piece that goes over the pie plate. So in case the pie plate should ever break, you don't get pieces on the floor. Personally, I prefer to take that out so that I can see what's going on with the flames. But some people prefer to have it, to have that safety. So we've got these 2 jam nuts. They are jammed together. Okay. Not fatally jammed together. So we'll probably do the same thing. We'll probably scratch away some of this creosote and vacuum it and all that.
Okay.
The other thing that needs to happen is I'm going to grind these 3 flush with this surface. Then I'm going to center punch them, drill them out to 3/16 again, and then tap those so that we have the holes in the same places with good threads. The draft is fine. You can use the same wire wheel on this.
Okay.
Try not to nick the this. We might be able to persuade these to come out and replace those with some stainless ones. And the benefit there is hopefully you won't have that rust to deal with again. I was surprised. I was able to get this off, you know, when it was still on the truck. Sometimes you have to use screwdrivers to sort of pry it loose, or soak it in penetrating oil. Didn't have to do any of that, so we were lucky. So I'll take it out in the other room and I'll do these, carefully grind those flush.
Okay.
Since 3 of these bolts had snapped off, I ground them flush and center punched them with this, and now I'm going to drill them out to 3/16 and rethread them so that we can use the 4 bolts that hold the elm tree back in place. tapping gun, which is very similar to a drill, only it has the tap which establishes the threads. Okay, this is the combustor housing, which is upside down, and it has a groove which I put a 1/4-inch gasket, and all these orange clamps are to hold that in place until the glue has dried, which it has. So I will remove all of those. The next step is to place it on the stove barrel and bolt it in place. Line it up so that the holes are where they want to be. Alright, I used 1.5 long 1/4-20 stove bolts. I'm going to use a 1/4-inch drill.
They call those stove bolts, are they hardened?
No, not yet. Not till you use them.
And is that a term that you buy them by? Call them stove bolts?
The barrel there were 2 openings in the barrel. There was a rectangular opening in the rear, which is called the bypass for the catalytic mode, so that the flames go right up the chimney when you're not using the combustor. So I closed that one off, and I closed off the front of, there was about a 7-inch diameter round opening in the barrel where the combustor can, the big heavy cast iron piece, sat. So basically I wanted a simple rectangular opening approximately centered on this housing. So I made 2 patches, I call them. And the other thing I'm going to do before I tighten these up is to use something that is, well, I'll show you the caulking container. It's a Rutland product. It's black fireplace mortar. And what happens when you first fire up the stove is cold, the flames are hot, and you get condensation on the inside of this piece. Okay, that's why you saw all this rust and stuff on the barrel, because that happens every time you fire it up from cold. And it will leak out from underneath this gasket, even though there's a gasket there. The moisture will leak through. But if I seal it all up with this ahead of time, and I wish I'd done that around this piece first, so I think I'll take this back off again.
Now, does that take a while to cure?
Or? Yeah, a little bit.
I'm not going to be firing it up for a few days yet. They're still redoing my chimney, so.
Yeah. Well, are you going to get this back in someplace warm?
Oh yeah, you
Okay.
betcha.
Yeah, okay. Because it isn't going to dry while it's cold.
No.
I don't think it would do too much harm, but it won't help the process. Yeah, this will do a better job of sealing that up if we do that first. Oh, still got a nut on it, that's why. Well, a lot of times, you know, and then I'm just gonna put a little bead of it around there. And on the back side, I just couldn't do this at all with that combustor housing in place. The whole idea is you want the stove to be airtight, watertight, all sealed up so that you have control over it when you're burning your fires. Okay. I'll do the same thing here. Back on the platform, drop the barrel on, install the front ring, and two of the what we call paint rods or temporary rods that I'm going to hold it together. We'll do two more that include the legs. As you can see, we're getting close to the end. All of these pieces have been cleaned up. Well, except for the bottom of the barrel, as you can see. The stove is going in Dan's basement, so he's not quite as fussy as some people might be if the stove were going in their living room. And once again, we've rebuilt many of the catalytic stoves, removing all of the catalytic parts and basically replacing that technology with the secondary combustion. Because as you can imagine, there are people who, as they saw the catalytic parts deteriorating, decided they didn't like them. They removed them and continued to operate the stove and would invariably get creosote buildup in their chimney. And hopefully this is going to make for a much simpler stove to operate, and on average a cleaner burning stove than certainly than when a catalytic has past its prime. Because with catalytics, they work great in the beginning, but the catalytic combustor itself has a life expectancy of only 3 to 5 years, and they gradually deteriorate to the point where they may look like they're okay. People have a hard time telling from visual examination whether or not they're functional. But there's a thermometer on the front of the combustor housing on the catalytic stoves, and you're supposed to shift them back into the catalytic mode when the temperature gets back up to 500 degrees, and then it should easily climb to over 1,000 degrees. And if yours isn't climbing to that point and higher, then it's not working level. But I trust the measuring tape more, so I will take measurements on either side.
I remember this.
All right, 34 and a little over 5/8. 34 and just under 5/8. That's it. Baffle, which is about 3/4 the length of the firebox. This is the place where the unburned flue gases are actually smoke from the wood gathers and combines with the superheated air from secondary combustion. This is a tight fit, so I have to hammer it in place. Okay, you can cut that. Stainless steel baffle needs to be fastened to the barrel. There are two existing holes here from the previous catalytic baffle. We're going to use those holes, and then I'm going to drill a third hole in the front. Last step is to install the box beam for secondary combustion. So it is fastened in place with these two bolts here. So I drill it and I tap it and I put this bolt in. And that's that. And if you can take a look through the door, looking up, you'll see the bottom of the baffle and the box beam in this clamp, which temporarily held it in place. I'll pull the clamp out of the way. And we're all set for paint. He's wiping the barrel down with lacquer thinner, which dries really quickly, and it will remove most of the dust. This was not sandblasted, it was wire wheeled, so there's still a little bit of remaining rust. So we do everything we can to clean it up before paint. Operations. I use a Thermalox satin black normally, and it generally takes 2 coats. So since it's cold outside, we're going to close the door again and I'll finish painting. We're doing the gasket on the outside edge of the inner flat glass, which I had cleaned up. This stove was made approximately 1984, and Dan tells me the original glass, original pipe plate, original inner glass are the only pieces of glass this stove has ever had. So assuming I don't break it today, it'll go back into service in a few days. Dan drove, what, approximately 2 hours, a little bit more maybe, to get here this morning. He has actively helped in cleaning up a lot of these parts and been a huge help in allowing us to finish this in, well, it'll be 5 to 6 hours. Still takes quite a chunk of time. So the flat glass in, the pipe plate goes in, this 1/4-inch rope gasket goes around the outside edge. He spent some time to clean up the nickel-plated elm tree. We're using stainless bolts. I usually use stainless rivets as hinge pins, but these won't come out, so I'm not inclined to force them. I don't want to risk breaking anything. So we'll just secure this in place. Half-inch semi-chrome polish to polish up the door handle. We're going to put this back on the stove. Dan's replacing the tie rods. The paint rods are coming off. I'm going to have to do a little adjustment on that. And we have the ash apron to install. look at what that's going to look like. It's not perfect, it has a little bit of rust residue, but basically that's the finished product. Right down to the last little details, we're putting a new doorknob on it. The fire brick's inside now. It's finished.
Awesome.
Awesome. Oh, it'll always show signs of its age,
Yes.
but short of sandblasting it and getting real carried away with it, I think we did pretty well today.
I think so too.